All right. So today I'm super excited to have one of my best friends in the whole world, Frazer Will, on the podcast today. And for people that don't know, if they're not a judoka or they recently came to the sport, Frazer was recently 2018, I think, inducted into the Judo Canada Hall of Fame. Was it 2018?
Something like that, yeah.
And then 7th at the Beijing Olympics, 2008. Losing to the 2 Olympic bronze medalists and the former world champion on his way to a 7th place finish. And then business owner, entrepreneur. We're in his beautiful building, which is gigantic and keeps getting added on every time I come by. It's bigger. So this is Rawhides in Steenan, Saskatchewan. And it's a fantastic, huge building that's just growing, and basically anything that you need in this region, you can get here. So, yeah. So I guess from that standpoint, what made you want to come back to Saskatchewan after your career of judo in Montreal and competing internationally?
Yeah, I had an awesome time in Montreal, great judo program there, and made a lot of memories and a lot of super experiences. But, you know, Saskatchewan's a bit of a different place to grow up, and it's a really tight-knit community. So the idea, after finishing judo, although I love Montreal, Quebec's a great province as well, there is that pull to just kind of come home and closer to family, and the business opportunities here as well. My French, although could speak some, it wasn't very completely bilingual, so my options were a little bit limited in Quebec, and a lot more opportunity in Saskatchewan to join the family business and kind of build what we got going on here.
Right. So the again, more background is that you grew up in Saskatchewan in a community called Star City, which to my knowledge,
born and raised.
To my knowledge is like 500 people.
Yeah, 400 on a good day, I think.
Right. Yeah. So booming. and then when you came back, you came to an even smaller area, Sturgis, Steenan region, where it's sort of a number of towns close together that are 100 people, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the town of Steenan, like 70 people population.
Right.
Awesome village, don't get me wrong, but it's small, right?
Right.
Very small, way different than Montreal was. I was living in Montreal there for 12 years. But yeah, the community here is very tight-knit, and there's a lot of little towns within like a 20, 30 kilometer range that they all work together. Whether it's sports or business, you know, agriculture, farming, everybody kind of works together to help each other out to succeed. It's a beautiful place to be.
Right. And that's, I guess, definitely the primary industry here is you have part of the reason the populations are so small is you have these massive farms. Like when you're driving, it's dirt roads and massive, massive farms. So your family farms approximately like 22,000 acres?
Yeah, combined right around that mark.
Right. Yeah. So when you think of the vastness of that, I can't really comprehend it. It's huge, obviously. So when you have that much farmland, obviously you can only have so much of a dense population in that region. So this is sort of like one of the farming capitals of the country for things like canola.
Yeah, exactly. We grow all the main crops, and it's down to the fertile belt comes through this area, so it's a great place to be in the ag industry, and it's a lot of cutting edge stuff as well. The technology and the way equipment's developed, it definitely leads this region to be on the forefront of farming. Right. And a lot of people will go to university, whether it's in a tech background or agronomy, any aspect in those fields, and they'll still come home because this is the place to be for agriculture. Right. Which wasn't my background. I grew up on a farm, but I spent all my time like in sport, judo. I was really focused on growth and development there, but the opportunity to come home was still here. Actually bought into the restaurant Rawhides right after finishing university and judo. And for the first 3 years when I was home, I was here like 24/7, threw myself into the restaurant and just here from early morning to late night, working to kind of continue to make Rawhides a successful business and a great place for people to work, and an incredible place for customers to come and enjoy themselves and eat some pretty damn good food.
Yeah, a couple things is restaurant industry is known for being an incredibly difficult industry to navigate and make work. It's a really tough industry that way. So the fact that it's so successful, and to explain the success of it is literally if you go to communities that are 45 minutes to an hour away or further, and you tell someone, oh, this is where I'm staying. So I met someone recently. Hey, where are you staying? Oh, this is where I'm staying for the next couple of days. Oh, you need to go to Rawhides. Their first response was, you need to go to Rawhides. If you're in that region, you have to go to Rawhides. And I said, well, actually, my friend owns Rawhides. So it's just like, you know, you go an hour and a half from this town of 70 people and everyone knows about this restaurant, which shows like how incredible a place it is, like the atmosphere, the aesthetics, and it's really beautiful. All of this natural wood everywhere. There's about 10,000 square foot patio here in the middle, somewhere, something like that. You had your wedding here.
Yeah.
And now they've just added on this massive salon. And part of the reason I want to talk about some of that so much, or why I bring that up, is all of this highlights the one thing that stood out to me upon, we probably met when I was about 12, 13, briefly competing at national championships, Quebec Opens. Like I remember you competing against a buddy of mine, Andy Zettel. And
Zettel.
Yeah. So I remember from that age, we didn't really know each other. We got to know each other about 20 when I moved to the National Training Center, and I was there for 2 years. And the thing that stood out for sure to me was, if you wanted to know, if you wanted the guiding light of who is training as hard or harder than anyone there, that was noticeable every single day when I was at the National Training Center. Frazer was there, training as hard or harder than anyone there. And it wasn't sometimes, it was like consistently. So for me, you were sort of like that North Star of like, if I want to be good, this is the person that I need to outwork. And not that I was successful at that, but if I was in your neighborhood, then I felt like I wasn't letting myself down in terms of work ethic. And that's clearly transitioned to what you do professionally. You're a workhorse. It's like, I don't know where the energy comes from. You have so much energy to put into all these types of work, and you have a family of 2 children, and they're involved in high performance sport. And then you carry this enthusiasm. It's like, it's really impressive.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a choice that a person needs to make. It goes hand in hand. There's a strong link between how hard you work for something and the focus you have for it, and that short and long-term success, how you're going to achieve it. And that success might change over time, but the idea is, hey, if I want to kind of do the best I can in this one field, whether it's in the restaurant industry, in farming, in judo, sport, anything really, it's kind of the effort you put in. And I think that work I would put in was able to compensate a bit for some of the skill I lacked. I wasn't the most talented judo player by far. I started judo a little late in life. Mm-hmm. Like I really started competing more when I was 14, 15 years old. Right. So my technical capacity, and I never really emphasized that as much as I probably should when I first started, wasn't as sound as it could be. So I had to put that extra effort in my strength, my conditioning, my resiliency. I guess I had to double down on a daily to try to increase my probability of kind of achieving my goals and where I wanted to be, and be the best judo player I can be, and then the best restaurant owner I can be, or the best farmer I could be. All those things trying to translate through. Right.
Yeah. It's funny. There's a couple things that stand out, and one thing that I think of is in terms of sport is when someone is mismatched in a funny way. So if you've watched tennis or baseball, someone's left-handed. Even with this distance, someone being left-handed makes for a really difficult thing, because you're used to everybody being right-handed. Most people in life, I don't know what the number is, but let's throw the estimate that it's 75 and 25. So you're far more likely to run into right-handed people. It might be higher, I'm not sure, but clearly the majority of people are right-handed. So when you see a left-handed pitcher, that little difference makes it a lot harder to hit the ball. It doesn't only come to that. There's other ways that we can be unique or odd in our ways.
I know where you're going with this.
I was a left-handed judoka, okay, as an example. So one thing about Frazer is he had this ridiculous muscular framework, and he fought 60 kilos, which is the lightest division. I'll let you put the number.
5'1" on a good day.
Oh, really? I would have given you 5'2". Okay, yeah, no. So 5'1", and what's really interesting about that is there's not that many people that are doing judo at this high level, at that height. So everyone that you compete against, if they're 5'6" or 5'7" or 5'8" or 5'5", it doesn't matter, because all of them are taller. So you're fighting what you're used to, which is everyone's taller. But not everyone's used to fighting someone that's significantly shorter. And I don't mean that, but and so that's something that it's those kinds of things that are interesting to me. It's the same in the other realm, like Teddy René of France. He's like 6'9". You're not used to that kind of physical frame. And so when you go against someone, how often do you compete against someone or train with someone at this height? So if you meet Frazer at an international event for the first time and he has this height advantage, I'll say, they're not ready to deal with the consequence of that. So that's something that I always thought was like interesting.
Yeah, a person can, I think, when you have those physical differences, it's important to kind of capitalize on it, right? Don't shy away from it. Yeah, it'd be kind of crazy for me being 5'1" to think that some of the techniques I would be able to do successfully on the international scene versus like a lot of guys, they'd be kind of looking down at me. I'm looking up, their hands are kind of at their waist.
Right.
And it's, this guy's going to be looking for the legs maybe, which as the judo rules kind of changed and developed, that's something that in hindsight, and what I would, if I'm talking to some younger judo players or anybody in any industry, hey man, look to see where things are heading as far as rules and regulations or industry trends are going, and try to get ahead of that, because there's that lag time between when a person starts working on something, whether it's a judo technique or a judo system or a business practice or anything. If you can see putting some energy to see where those trends are going or where the rules and regulations are going, it takes that time from starting something to being skilled enough at it to be able to do it at a higher level.
Right.
So part of the issue, I guess, at the later years, at the end of the career, was as these rules changed, it was a little harder for me to adapt, because instead of seeing the writing on the wall a bit and changing my judo systems and some of the techniques, I kind of waited till stuff was already in place, and then it was a scramble to try to get it figured out.
Right. Yeah. So your career, you started competing internationally at a very young age. You were national champion at what, 16? 17? Senior national champion?
Senior national champion at 17.
17. Yeah. Senior national champion. So started going to international events soon after. That would have been around 1999.
Yeah, 99.
Started going to internationals, went to the Olympics at 2004. The end of your career.
2008.
2008. Yeah, 2008. Multiple world championships, 2005 world championships, I know. And then near the end of your career, there was another young, fantastic judoka that we both know, Sergio Pessoa, who ends up going to those games.
Yeah, the beast.
Yeah, beast.
He's a weapon.
But the thing about in terms of the technique and how you competed, that's interesting is like, there's the expression to know oneself. And I think sometimes we get so insecure about things that are unique about us, but that's what makes us special. And so you have people say things, or people, I'm sure, and I know, and I've witnessed the people treatment of you based on that. It's very easy to put someone down because they're shorter or taller or whatever. And so it's very easy for us to sort of create a shell and shy away from that and not utilize it. I'm 5'9". I fought 2 weight classes above you. We train together on a regular basis. There's a technique that used to be called a fireman's carry that's in wrestling. In judo, we call it kataguruma, where you put someone across your shoulders. And what I can say from my experience of doing judo with you is, with that height advantage, I'm standing up here, I'm naturally above you, and like a shot, all of a sudden I'm across your shoulder blades, because utilizing that height advantage to get underneath me was so quick and so easy. And all of a sudden I'm across your shoulders just waiting to hit the ground. And I think it's easy, especially as young people, to see what we think is wrong with us and then try to do other things to make up for it in some weird way, or that's not okay, and like hating that part of ourselves. And at least in your judo, you embrace that fully. That's where we're talking about using leg grabs or certain specific techniques, is you utilize the advantage that you had was you were lower to the ground. You had a lower center of gravity, so it was hard to throw you in a lot of ways, and it was easy for you to get underneath people. So drop techniques, including a very unorthodox drop taitoshi, drop seoinage, and kataguruma, you utilized your height in the best way that you could, which made you so successful despite people on the outside thinking of that as a disadvantage.
Yeah, I guess when a person's, my whole life I've been way shorter than everybody else.
Right.
So that idea, it's driven me in a lot of different ways. Like, hey, from a young age, I realized the difference. Not my head in the sand, my eyes were open enough to realize, hey, this is the way people view me. and this is the way I view myself, and take the attitude, I'm not going to let it hinder me or slow me down. I look at it as something that's going to kind of make me stronger, whether that was good or bad at a young age. I know I got in a fair amount of trouble, and every chance I had, I felt like I had to kind of prove myself.
Right.
So even though I started judo late, like I was wrestling and fighting with my brothers and schoolmates and everybody from the time I can remember. Some of my first memories are in the schoolyard squaring up, not fist fighting, but going to one of the older kids and saying, hey, let's wrestle, because he was calling me short or something like that, and then tuning him up and feeling, good about it, but also like realizing, hey, this is probably going to be a long-term thing where fighting's not the solution, obviously, but there's a certain part of me that just wouldn't say, okay, well, I'm smaller, that means I have to be treated less than.
Right.
It was more like, okay, well, this is who I am and what I am, and work through it and not let any of those obstacles get in my way. And judo was a perfect sport for that. Like wrestling, anything with a weight division where, there'll be some separation. So I was in the light category, which kind of evened that playing field. And then also, just because everybody's taller than me doesn't mean I can't achieve a lot of success.
Right.
It's kind of interesting that, I'll have people come up to me, and how often do you hear somebody come up to somebody else that they've never met before and say, man, wow, you're fat, or wow, you're ugly.
Right.
But you don't hear that very often.
Right.
With me, it happens all the time where somebody I've never met before in my entire life comes up to me and says, looks down and says, wow, you're short.
Right.
You're tiny.
Right.
And say it in a way that is very degrading. It's not like it's, oh man, hey, that must be cool, you're short. It's like, whoa, man, what's wrong with you? You're tiny. Like something's odd. Right. So I kind of look at it, I brush it off. Like it is what it is, right? It's their perspective on it. I don't let it get in my way, and I just laugh it off. But if somebody went to them and, like, let's say they have an eye that's not quite right, or ear and somebody walked up to them first time they met him and be like, man, you got a goofy ear. Like, what's wrong with you? Right. Or like, wow, you're like 150 pounds overweight. Like, what's wrong with you? That type of dialogue and discourse isn't acceptable. But yet when it's somebody who's short, and that's nothing I can change about it. Right. I am who I am. Right. And it seems acceptable for people to come up and just say, wow, man, you're tiny. So from a young age, I guess that was the scenario and the perspective I've taken. It's like, hey, I am who I am. I'm going to work with it and make the best I can of it. Right. It's actually, I can't imagine being any other way. Right. Like it's led to a lot of opportunities for me.
Right. Yeah, I wonder, like, part of me thinks too, like, maybe that's what made you. There's different reasons that we get to these places of being incredibly goal-oriented when you're a high-performance athlete. Like, goal orientation is, like, such a massive part of us. Well, when you have something like, in your case, people looking down at you for your height, that lights a fire. That motivates the heck out of you. Like, that's going to make you be like, or can. In your case, it can. It can also really be debilitating and handcuff people. But in your case, you took that fire of people being this way and being like, oh yeah, I'm short. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just going to be the best judoka in the country. And then I'm just going to be the best judoka in the Pan Ams. And then I'm just going to be one of the best judoka in the world. That may have consciously or subconsciously fed that a lot.
100%. I guarantee if I wasn't 5'1", I would have not, I probably wouldn't have found judo. Right. Or it wouldn't have found me. And I wouldn't have had, and because I wouldn't have found it, I wouldn't have had the success in it, right? It was kind of one of those things where I found it, and part of that was driven with the idea that my dad, like when I was young, I remember sitting on the living room floor, and he'd open this like little chest. And inside this little chest, he had like his little track and field ribbons and little things like that. Right. And I thought, oh my God, my dad's like the most incredible athlete in the world. And he would do this thing where he'd like reach and he would pick up the kitchen table with his pinky. Like it was a cheap table, and he'd lift it up, and I'd be, oh, he's the strongest man in the world. Like, I have to find a way to be like this. And I want my kids to look at me the way that I was looking at him. Right. So, finding judo and a good buddy, Wayne Smith from school back in Star City, he's the one that, he started judo and he was having some success, and his name was getting in the paper. So I went to talk to him one day. I said, yo, man, what's this judo thing? And so he explained to me, he's like, you got to come try it out. Like, you love wrestling and you love fighting and that kind of stuff. And you should come try it. So I did. and it was a great fit, and it provided me that opportunity for kind of improving myself, like physical capabilities. I had that mentality already because I felt like I had to kind of prove myself being shorter than everybody.
Right.
And as well as it satisfied that goal of when I have kids, I wanted a big chest full of medals and everything that I could open up and show them and see, like, you know, look at what Dad's done.
Right.
And so that they would look at me the same way that I was looking at my dad at the time. So those kind of things all fit together.
Yeah, that's funny.
To drive it a bit.
To think that I think of that now as a father. We're both fathers.
Yep.
And so a huge motivating factor for me, as funny in some sense, as a father, you can understand this. Your parents or your children look up to you and love you no matter what. No matter what my kids are, especially when you have a strong relationship with them, no matter what, they love me, no matter what, they're proud of me, and they're really happy that I'm their dad. But you feel, especially as the adult, you feel like you want to earn that love that they give to you freely. You want to earn the respect of them. You want them to think you're special and have a reason to think you're special, I guess you could say. And so that's what I feel a lot as a father now is I want my kids to think that I'm special and that I've earned it, not just think I'm special because I happen. But I you know, it's a very funny thing in your head. I am special because I'm the father of my kids and I love them and they're brilliant and beautiful and, you know, but I also want to feel like I've earned some of that to a degree. So I feel that sense in the same way. You felt that you wanted to do that when you were younger from this experience with your dad, which is really interesting, like seeing how proud of a father you are and how engaged you are with your kids. It makes a lot of sense. But it's funny to see that at such a, I've always said this about you. You're like so wise, you know, it's like to know that at that age that you want to do that as a father down the road, as like a teen is pretty amazing. So yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. Whether it was kind of an interesting thought. I think I must have been, I don't know, 6 years old at the time, or even 5 years old when this chest came out. Like, I don't remember a lot from when I was a kid, but these are some of these small memories I have at a very young age, and having that feeling like this is what I want when I have kids, for them to be open up this chest. I just want my chest to be a little bigger.
Right, exactly. Amazing. This episode is brought to you by the Northwest Territories Judo Association. I am proudly the executive director and head coach. Our focus is on making judo accessible throughout the territory, developing students from grassroots to high performance. We're incredibly fortunate to have the support of school districts, town, recreational programs, as well as the territorial government. Please check us out at any one of the links listed below. So with the point of goal setting, one thing that I think about a lot is goal setting and how to make it. It's important that we have these goals that I like to call impossible goals. Goals to do things that you have no reality in actually doing to some degree because it's such an incredibly difficult thing. 7th place at the Olympic Games may as well be an impossible goal because of the percentage of the population that's going to do it. Basically no one. It's basically 0% of the population. You know, it's so infinitesimally small that 7 billion people to take a 7th place at the Olympics or in that realm. Such an impossible goal. Those goals are really important. Those goals feed us to want to do the things that we need to do to get to that place. But I think what is every bit as important or more important is the small, tangible goals every day. I believe the Japanese expression is kaizen, where it's you look for small improvements every day, a small improvement every day. And then when you look back over a month, a year, 10 years, you've made this incredible growth as a person, as a human, as a judoka, whatever that may be. And so you, at an early age, obviously made this incredible goal of, I want to have this chest full of successes that I can show my kids to make them proud. So when did you start making that more, like when did you go, I think I want to go to the Olympics in judo? When did that click in? And then the next one is what did you do on a daily basis, as a goal setting daily basis, to continue yourself down that road?
Yeah, it was actually quite later in my career, I guess, when I decided, hey man, this Olympics is something I want to be part of and represent Canada at. It didn't happen early on. Like when I started judo, I just wanted to build that chest.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, boom, I won senior nationals and I qualified for junior worlds. And even then, I wasn't thinking Olympics. I wasn't even thinking senior world championships. Just I had Johan Beaton was a coach of Saskatchewan, and I had a great relationship with him. And he did a lot to help and grow me in judo and for Team Sask. And he's the one that said, hey, like if you want to have a shot of doing the best you can at junior worlds, you got to move to Montreal, at least for a small period of time in preparation for the junior world championships. And I said, well, I talked to my parents and they said, okay, we can make this happen. So very fortunate that they supported me on that, and very fortunate I kind of had the direction to go. So I moved to Montreal and started training seriously in that structured setting. And even then, Olympics wasn't the goal until I started achieving some success. And then people started talking to me about the process of qualifying for the Olympics and what that meant. And then it became a possibility. It went from not even being in the picture to like those little small steps and achievements. It became a point where, you know what, I think I can do this. And furthermore, I want to do this. Like this is now something that drives me. So it went from not even being in the picture to realizing it was a possibility to then a driving force and complete focus on this task of trying to achieve it. And so all those little accomplishments and little goals and little improvements led to it being a possibility, and then from a possibility to kind of the dream and the main goal.
Yeah, it was an interesting time too in Sask in reference to Johan Beaton. So Johan Beaton went to the 1996 Olympic Games for Canada. He worked as part of the national coaching staff. He became head coach for Saskatchewan. He was also a coach for Winnipeg. He's currently the head coach of Alberta and oversees the regional training center there. And there was this period of time where the province of Saskatchewan, not at the time a hotbed for judo, but again feeds this idea that I believe strongly is the success of people from small pockets of the planet. These small population bases is really common. Is all of a sudden you had Gonzalo Ebenez, and you had Callum Ketcher, and you had yourself, and you had Kim Hardy. You had all these people medaling at nationals. Paul Yun, he beat me for a bronze medal at nationals one year. Thanks, Paul. So you had this province that's not historically a judo monster come up with this group that are now winning national championships at 17, like this really strong group. All around the same age. Gonzalo leading the pack, I would say, probably in terms of age, and he was getting the results first, a little bit older than us. But you had this pocket of people. Like I remember Callum just slaughtering everyone at nationals one year in such spectacular fashion. I think he fought 90 at the time, but he was, and another person, interestingly, super tall, super lean, like weird body type. And I mean that not in a rude way, unique body type to do judo. Like people weren't doing judo with that many people that were so tall and so lean. Like he just didn't fit the normal structure. Judoka are typically average sized people, 5'9", 5'11", somewhere in that range, reasonably stocky frame with big legs for lifting. Like that's sort of the, you think of a wrestler, a judoka is typically about the same. We're like the average body type. And so when you have someone that doesn't fit that body type, you're all of a sudden, this is an adjustment. So you had all of this success from this small group, this small community led by Johan that was incredibly successful.
And it was all derived from instilling the belief. Like when you're from a rural community, like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, rural communities,
Northwest Territories,
provinces, Northwest Territories, exactly. You're not surrounded by people that are on the national team a lot and all this kind of stuff, and you don't really grow up with the belief like I can go to the Olympics, or I can medal, I could win the Olympics, I can be world champion, unless it's maybe hockey. But even then, it still feels so far away because you don't have somebody that's close, that's done it, that you can relate to. And Johan, becoming the provincial coach, it became, hey, this guy's from Manitoba and he did it, and he's telling us that we can do it. If we do this and this and this,
we can get there.
Constant, like put the effort in and put the time in, you can get there. You can. There's no reason why you can't. Furthermore, you should. If you don't, you're not living up to your potential in the sense where, it's not just something a dream that maybe you can get to out of this little, if all the stars align, you can do it. It's like a framework that's saying, hey, you do this and this and this and this, you can do it. And so that belief in it almost became to a point. I remember being part of that provincial team where it's getting a medal at nationals wasn't it shouldn't be something that you think, oh, yay, I got a medal at nationals. It's like, if I don't get a medal at nationals,
it's a bad day.
It's a bad day.
Right.
So that's the point where the team was at. And the team wasn't talking, oh, we hope we get one medal. It's like, okay, how many medals are we going to get? And let's make sure these are our goal. Like that belief that we can do it. And it was leading up to it and belief in that coaching system. And I think that's something that so many of these smaller communities, Steen and Star City,
right,
Breezeville, Sturgis, all the area we're at and in, piles of very capable athletes that if they wanted to and were provided the opportunity, they can achieve great things or achieve some higher goals if that's what they want. But the belief that they can or that it's possible, it just isn't there. It's not brought to them in a way that, and structured in a way that they can actually achieve it. It just feels like it's like eating a whale, that expression,
right.
How to eat a whale, one bite at a time.
Right.
Well, it's the same, or an elephant, I should say. It's the same concept, I think, in sport. The elephant might be the Olympics or World Championships, and you get there by one step at a time in all these micro goals.
Right. Yeah, there's a couple things there, so I'll try not to be too long-winded, but number one is that stands out to me there is confidence, the importance of confidence. So our body is a muppet to our mind, right? So if we want to accomplish the things we have to do, we have to believe, like without the framework or foundation that it's possible, it's over. You have to know, like the confidence has to be real. It doesn't matter how much of a physical freak you are. You can be the most talented person, and we've all seen, both of us know some of the most talented judoka or athletes we've ever seen not have near the success that even I had, which is far lesser. I've seen so many people that were like, this person's going to be a star, and you just see that not occur. I think confidence is such a huge factor in that self-belief, which is also feeds to why I think small town communities are so successful. Why communities like Patrick Marleau played more games in the NHL than anyone ever. He's from a town in Saskatchewan, I believe has a population base of 50 people. I don't know what it is right now. Maybe we'll put it up, but 50 people. He's played more games in the NHL than anyone ever. Youngest person in the modern era to play in the NHL. These stories aren't rare. And I think the other factor is when you talk about, people from the big city, the common thing that everyone just says is, well, there's nothing to do in small towns. There's so much to do in a city. Oh, what? Because a city has a museum? How often do you go to the museum? Every day? Oh, because it's got Canada's Wonderland. Does everyone have a season's pass to Canada's Wonderland? It's ridiculous. Everywhere that you go, there's something to do or nothing to do. It's all on you. What do you do in a city that you don't do in a small town? And if you're in a small town, you go to the city to go to the baseball game. My hometown is 2,700 people. I want to go to a Blue Jays game. I went to a Blue Jays game before I lived in Toronto. Probably went to more Blue Jays games outside of living in Toronto than living there. So the idea that there's so much to do in a city because life is so much better or whatever, you don't do those things every day. So I don't buy that. I think the one thing that might be undervalued, that I have no scientific data on this, okay? But when we talk about confidence, what small towns have is a community, and what cities often don't have out of, I don't know how to phrase this, ethnic or regional groups. So for instance, you have a strong Filipino community in Markham or Mississauga, that kind of thing. So you have people that come together, and that makes communities within the city. But outside of maybe certain things like that, you don't have this community living in cities. And what you have in small towns is community, because everybody knows everybody. So in my town, when I won, the Kichi Sai Open at 7, I was in the newspaper. Right?
Yep.
Because that's a big deal. If I won the Kichi Sai Open and I lived in Toronto, I'm not making the Toronto Star. Right? So everyone in town knows of me as this judo person, which has some positives and some negatives, but a lot of it is you get community support. When you walk down the street in Steen or in Star City, everyone knows you as this national medalist in judo. So you have people believing in you and thinking and knowing that you're very good. It's different in Toronto. So I think that's one thing that I've thought about recently is I think that small community creates community, and communities raise people, not just children, they raise people. And so when you have a community and you are striving for something, the community knows you. You know your neighbors where you might not know them in Montreal or Vancouver. So knowing your neighbor, and then those neighbors are pulling for you. Maybe it's like the pastor at the church. Like I remember mine, Father Hudson, he was excited about my brother and I doing judo, and so it's like, I'm probably not getting that in a city. I think that helps build the confidence because I'm not really sure what else it is, but it just makes more sense to me now.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely an interest, like the whole community, and you feel it gets behind you because they take pride in your success, and not just your direct family, like people within your region,
right?
And everybody kind of gets behind it. In 2008 for the Olympics, like the whole school, like I'd already been long since graduated, but the whole school of Star City, they all had like a kind of a rally and got together, and there was like put together this big poster, I guess, and everybody wishing, like the whole community was together.
Right.
And I felt like, I was going to compete for myself,
right.
for my family, for my country, and for my community and my,
right.
They loved me either way, but like you felt like they were kind of lifting a person up and helping to drive them forward, where some of the other teammates from larger areas weren't necessarily getting that community love and support. It was more like, okay, yeah, going to Olympics, good job. There's about 15 other people maybe in different sports from that area going to the Olympics, and kind of good luck and pat on the back sort of thing. Not the whole community getting behind them and really trying to support them in their goals.
Yeah, and even up to that point, like even things like fundraisers. You don't really see, you have that, but like, I know a lot of people in the province of PEI. I love PEI. It's like one of my favorite places in the country. And athletes that go to the national championships, guys like Mikey Perry and George medaling at national championships, they get community support. They do fundraisers. People come, and I can't speak to them specifically, but I know that Judo PEI does fundraisers, and people want to get on board and they want to support them, and they do those things like you remember back in the day, as being older now, I guess, is like, the car wash fundraiser, things like that. Like people do that and they support those athletes. And again, that is a financial commitment, which means they're putting confidence in you. Like all of that at some subconscious level, we're going to put our money into this, and not because we expect something in return, because we want to support this journey and because we believe in you. And people believing in you is such a powerful drug, or such a, such a powerful force, which just feeds our confidence more. And confidence is like so important for athletes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And from so many of those realms, if you're able to tap into them and feel in that support, it from all angles, that confidence is fortified,
right,
and makes it a little more resilient too. When sometimes a person, and we both know through competing and training, there's tough days and there's tough competitions. There's lots of times where a person's disappointed in their performance, but and a lot of little things are out there to erode one's confidence, and having community behind you helps to try to fortify that and make it a little more resilient to some of the challenges that a person faces as they kind of go and pursue their dreams. One thing I would say from a rural aspect that makes it a bit of a challenge that somebody from a larger center doesn't, or is less of an obstacle maybe, is just a time and ability to train in that specific sport.
Right.
So say being from a small town versus a larger area, just the amount of training facility time you have might be less, or there's a lot more travel time to get into where you need to be, which is a bit of a hindrance. But where some athletes might say, hey, that's just, too much for me to do. If that's your goal and your dream, it's identifying that, but then identifying what you can do to compensate for that.
Right.
So people from a smaller area, you might not have as much, say, mat time in judo, but you can do all that other training, mental and physical, in between times that have a pile of benefit that can help you make up for a little less mat time, or a little less
training partners,
time, or a little less ring time, or training partners that still help you become better at what you want to be.
Right.
It's just identifying those challenges and coming up with constructive solutions to work through them, rather than saying, if this is how it is and I'm just never going to get to where I want to be because of this and this. It's, hey, this is a reality. This is what I'm working with, and here's what I can do to make up for it and still increase the odds of achieving these goals and successes.
Yeah. And it's also because you have to work for it. It's like, what's the expression of, you only appreciate the things that you earn.
Right.
Really, right?
Good point.
There is an expression somewhere. I don't know what it is, but that's the gist. That's the gist of the expression. And the other one is that distance makes the heart grow fonder. So it's like you have this distance that you have to travel. And then it's not all the time, and it's not a guarantee, and it's not just sitting there waiting for you. Sort of like all things. So I have to travel this distance to get here. I'm going to appreciate my time on the mats. I'm going to look forward to my time on the mats. It's very easy. Sort of like in a relationship, you're dating someone, it's really, really exciting. And then maybe you're living together. And then all of a sudden you take that person for granted because they're accessible all the time. They're always right there. If your dojo is right across the street and it's the best judoka in the world, you go, yeah, I can go anytime. They're right there. You know, right. The best judoka in the world are right there. But if you go, I have to drive 2 hours to get to training, or, you know, for instance, with your son, Sage, where you're driving all over the territory because he's an incredible lacrosse player and baseball player, you're driving all over the province to get him to these trainings. When you get to that place, you're probably more likely to be like, I had to sit in a car for an hour and a half to get here. I'm not going to get here and just sit on the side. Yeah. I'm going to put in work, because otherwise, why'd I get in the car for an hour and a half? Nobody wants to sit in a car for an hour and a half twice a week, one direction, right? Yeah. An hour and a half, one direction. So you might appreciate your time of doing it more because of that.
Yeah. So the 4 hours you get a week are 4 hard-fought, constructive, development, efficient hours versus 8 hours that a person gets where, you know, the majority of them are not squandered, don't want to say, but aren't optimized.
Right.
And that gets to be a bit of a slippery slope because it's so easy. It's hard to battle. It's hard to get out there and put in your best effort while you're out there to improve what you're doing. And it's not easy. That's why it's kind of a rarity to really achieve one's potential,
right?
And goals, because it's a grind.
Yeah.
And being out there and putting in the time in anything, whatever you're in, whether it's sport or life or industry or relationships, it's about like focused time and effort.
Right.
And if you have 8 hours, but only 1 hour actually you're putting in your full effort, and the 7 you're half-assing it in whatever it is, versus 4 hours, those 4 hours you're focused, working your butt off and trying to become better at what you're doing, you're going to get a lot more out of those 4 hours than you are out of the 8.
Yeah, and I think, it's like, it's really easy to fall in that. And what you and I both saw is we both came from places where we traveled these huge distances. I used to drive 2.5 hours one way to do judo. When we got to Montreal, we wanted to take advantage of our time in Montreal. And I'm not, again, something that you told me when we were young and you were very wise and I was an idiot, which I still, whatever, is that high performance is not for everyone. The life that we're living and what we're doing is not for everyone. And that does not come with judgment. So me looking at someone not training as hard where I may have judged them, no matter their level of success, well, maybe that's not what they want to do, and that's not necessarily what they should do. But what we did see, independent of judgment, is you did see people that came to the National Training Center and they would burn out in a month to 2 months because they would come maybe every day and they wouldn't put the work in because they're not used to that. It is hard. Like, it's really hard. So them coming every day and putting the work in, maybe they're not appreciating it because it's always been available to them. Or they wouldn't come every day when it's readily available. You've now moved to train at the National Training Center, you don't come. What are you doing? If your goal is to be this athlete, right? Then what are you doing if that's the case? You're not putting in that you're not appreciating that time. And I think that's one thing where there was like a lot of mutual respect because we came wanting to do those things, wanting to put that work in. And when it comes to talking about how hard it is one thing that one of the huge benefits of high performance sport that I love is the bonds that you create in high performance sports I've never had in any other aspect of my life in that way. You're working so hard with this same goal. It's competitive at times. It's competitive, but it's not necessarily competition against each other. In a sport like judo, you and I aren't competing in the same division. So we both have this same goal. We want to get to the same place. We're both working so hard to get there. And you want it so badly, you emotionally break down, literally emotionally break down. Walking home from the dojo crying to another person who's 21, who's a guy, is not that common in most walks of life. That definitely happened with me. So when you do those things because you want it so bad and you're working so hard for it, the vulnerability, you can't hold it back. Like, it naturally happens. And that creates the bonds because people see the side of you that they would never normally see in work or other aspects of life. That working towards that goal with someone, and because it's so hard, the bonds you create with people are incredibly strong.
Yeah, it's quite the, and you see that in any kind of area, whether it's the military or any kind of, I guess, somewhat of a group activity, where it's kind of fortified through fire, like battling, putting your heart, your soul, blood, sweat, and tears out there, good days, bad days, and that shared experience of kind of the fight,
right?
Definitely builds a bond that lasts the test of time, and and you see people at their best and their worst, like achieving a goal or a result. That's a high that's hard to
it's very
beat. And I think that's why athletes struggle a lot when they're done doing their sport, because it's hard to replicate those type of intense emotions, whether it's complete, exhilaration from a win or achieving a goal, or it's complete heartbreak from losing it or an injury or anything like that. Those emotional swings, and they don't just happen at the big competitions. They can happen on
everywhere at training,
all the time, at training, and all kinds of stuff, because there's so many things that go on that, and it's such a roller coaster ride that it definitely strengthens these relationships, and it's only able to get through with a shared experience.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine trying to go through all that by myself.
Right.
Like, you need those people with you and around you to help you on the bad days and pat you on the back on the good days, and hold your head and hold your hand kind of thing, and help wipe off the tears or the blood or whatever, right? Some days you can't raise your arms to clear the stuff away. You need somebody there to kind of help you, and you can do the same for them. So and it's almost like, not everybody has that experience either. I wish that a big chunk of the population that has never experienced that or doesn't have that had the opportunity to share that with somebody, because it's a pretty special experience, and it's a different view, I guess, of humanity there too.
Those successes, it's sort of like a junkie chasing the dragon. It's so high, it's so powerful, and it can happen in funny ways too. That's the other part, is it doesn't matter the level that you're at. You perform at a way that you really performed. That's it. Yep. It didn't have to be a world championships. It could have been a provincial tournament, but you felt so good. Or maybe this guy, there's one of the greatest judoka ever, arguably the greatest ever, Jung from Korea. He won the 93 Worlds, 95 Worlds, 96 Olympics, 97 Worlds, retired. Undefeated at Worlds and Olympics. This guy is like some kind of beast. He has a documentary where he talks about it, and he said his toughest opponent in his career was another guy from Korea. So him beating that guy was his challenge. Then he goes to the World and wins it 3 times in the Olympics, like spectacular judoka. But the guy that he needed to beat was the other guy, so he could go to those events. It doesn't have to come from the highest day that you had, or it could be coming in training. Like, there was days when I went home pretty pumped that I threw you, It happened once maybe, but like that, I was very excited, So when you just feel like you performed well, so it's like intoxicating. Where it's hard too is in that transition out of, and what we do to ourselves. And to the point of short-term goals and long-term goals, is everyone knows about delayed gratification, how important a tool that is, and child psychology and all that kind of stuff. Delayed gratification is really important. People can do it. Not many animals can do that, where, if you wait 5 minutes, you can have twice as much of what you'd have if you have it now, that kind of thing. The cost of delayed gratification, when you focus too much on those impossible goals and that big goals, is that you're not living in the moment or being present. And that's something that I find, like, the older and hopefully wiser that I get, is like, being present is such an important goal. And there's distractions, and the world's more distracting now with social media and everything, is that if you're not present, then you're not appreciating that training time. You're not appreciating that mat time. You're not appreciating that bond time with those people, or those small successes every day, which is like really important. If you don't have those successes today, you'll never get to that big goal, and you have to live in that moment. That's really important. And then the second thing is when I look back at judo, as an athlete, the things that stand out to me the most as an athlete and as a coach isn't the day that I had the best day at some tournament. That's not what I miss the most. And that's what Jason Morris, who was my coach for a period of time, he's 92 Olympic silver medal, 93 world bronze medal, 2008 coached Ronda Rousey to her Olympic medal. When you look back, it's not those days that you remember. It's the grind that you like appreciate. It's the bond that you make with people. You miss that training time. You miss being there as much as that was like the struggle. That's what I often miss, and I think that's common.
Oh yeah, and it's such a weird truth that I think, and you talk to generations of athletes in every sport, or not even athletes, anybody that's been through that shared trauma, in the sense where, you know, battling for a goal, that's what they'll say, right? It's the grind, it's that daily pursuit that they miss, and some of those small successes that a person needs to kind of live in the moment for. Right. I think most athletes that have retired, if they can give advice to the younger generation of the athletes coming up through, is that, like, realize those small successes and live in the moment and cherish and value the day and those experiences, whether it's in lacrosse, scoring the goal, even though you lose the game. Look to
whether it's live in the day.
Yeah. Live in the day, in the moment, like you're talking about. That advice that retired athletes were giving today is like, just live in that moment, enjoy the moment, cherish the moment, because, you know, those long-term goals, although they are leading forces in your activities, if you're not living in the moment and enjoying that daily experience in the grind, you're not getting out of the experience what you're in. And it's so hard to kind of continue to drive forward if you're not enjoying the moment, right? Because every day feels like you're pulling fingernails. Yeah. And if every day you feel like you're pulling fingernails, then you're not going to get out it as much as you want. And furthermore, it's just mentally draining, right? Because having that feeling of, hey, you know, enjoying that moment and living in the present, that helps mentally fuel those times where it's a struggle. And if it's always just a struggle and you're never enjoying that moment, right, it's going to be a long, hard road. And it's going to break you. At the end, it's going to break you, and at the end, you're going to look back and be like, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah. One of my favorite things that I heard recently, and I can't remember, it might have been on like a Lex Friedman podcast, but the reference was, the past and the future do not exist. The only thing that exists is now. And that like really sticks with me, is like, first of all, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen. A million things could happen, or a million things could not happen. And the future that you want is based on what you do today anyways. So that future doesn't manifest itself. It happens based on what your actions are today. Inaction is an action in itself. So if you want those things, then the more present you are, the more important that is. And don't let the, you know, it's the other fact of that is being passionate for these big goals that you want to achieve, is that can really handcuff you with anxiety, because it feels impossible when you're chasing it. The only way that it becomes possible and tangible is if you do the things that you, I'll say, want to do today, because there's no need to be an Olympic champion. That's a choice that you make, that you want to do or not want to do. If that's what you really want to do, then this is the requirement of today. The requirement of today is to do those things. Choose to do those things every day. Wanting to be successful in some long-term thing isn't you have to work for that daily to get to that place. So it's like, it's really important that you do the things that you should do in order to achieve that goal. And it's very easy to sort of push those things back. Yeah. And
And so I think, like, part of that, living in the present and working on those goals, that by doing today, you increase the odds of accomplishing those goals or successes in the future. Right. Doing them is part of it, like showing up. Right. Showing up is the first step. Right. Whether it's training or whatever it is, showing up is the first step. And the second step is showing up with an attitude that's going to help you to get the most out of showing up. Right. Because it's unfair to yourself and your training partners or your teammates if you're showing up and you're not in the moment. You're not the attitude where, hey, you know, I'm here, I might as well do the best I can and get out of it the most I can while I'm here. Right. It's almost like you're slapping yourself in the face if you don't do that for yourself. Right. You're there, you showed up. Why not get the most out of it and have the right attitude? Because if you don't, you're not really getting the most out of it you can. And furthermore, you're just doing yourself a disservice. Like, get the right attitude. Hey, yeah, it sucks getting up at 6 a.m. and getting out there to put in your miles or whatever it is, but show up, do it, get it done, have that positive attitude. And it's one of those things that builds on itself, because you'll get out there, you'll get more out of the training or whatever it is you're doing, and then the next day might be that much easier because you're 2 steps ahead. Right. And then when it gets easier, it's like, oh man, this is getting easier for me. Or maybe not getting easier, but you're patting yourself on the back. You're like, man, that sucked. That was tough. But I did it.
Right. Yeah.
I did it.
Embrace the challenges, you know. It's like, if you can turn, it's just like, you know, it's sort of like happiness is a choice. It's not a destination. You have to choose to be happy every day. You have to choose to want to do those things every day. This isn't a place you get to. And then the one thing, sort of taking a mild step back that we were talking about before, is why athletes look back at the grind as the part they appreciate. Is often athletes that have had a lot of success did the grind. Obviously they had to do that every day to get to that place. And what we do, and where it's a trap, is we think sometimes that getting some achievement is what will make us whole or worthy or whatever. Like getting this medal is going to make us feel like we've earned something, which is a trap, and it's a dangerous trap, and it can really hamper you mentally. That doesn't make you whole. Just like me getting this will make me happy, or me buying this house will make me happy. That's not the case. So I think a lot of people look back, and our happiness isn't based on achieving those goals too. So when we look back at our careers, coaching, whatever it is, and we look at what we enjoyed so much, we know in hindsight, you have a momentary thing. Maybe you get a new job, or maybe you get a raise, and you think, if they just give me a raise, then I'll finally be happy, right? And then you get a raise, and a week later, you're over it. You're happy that you're making more money. Like, that's good. But it didn't make your life so much different that all of a sudden you now feel whole as a person. What makes you the person you are is what you do every day. It's not about getting that achievement every day. So when you look back, that happiness is these things that those accomplishments aren't medals. Those accomplishments are like building the character and the man or woman or person that you are. I think that's part of it, is like, you look at your judo career for so much more than that place in the Olympics or those world championship teams, you know? Yeah.
And at a young age, I had some success in judo, and I don't want to say it came without effort, but it was surprising, and the amount of time put in at that early age wasn't what would usually equate to having those achievements, like winning nationals at that young age, senior national. That was a surprise. You know, I was preparing for it, but you know, judo twice a week and some weight training and that kind of stuff. But it really wasn't that full out. Now that, as in my later career, what it took to do and achieve. And it was happy, but the satisfaction wasn't nearly there that there was in later life, when you actually put like full out effort and you had a plan and you worked hard for it and you led up to it and you went through that grind to get it. And then you achieved it, and the satisfaction a person gets from that leading up to it was far more. So in the end, say both were national champions, gold medals, but the one gold medal that a person had to really grind for and work for, and saw that there was way more satisfaction than the one that just kind of came out of the blue. And looking back, it doesn't necessarily remember, hey, yeah, getting that medal around my neck. It was those times leading up to it, and the fighting during that day. And those are all the memories I cherish and I value. And that makes me feel proud of the effort and I put in to achieving that, not like that achievement itself. So to go to the fact of what you're talking about, I think, and us as athletes or in any industry or people believing that buying that house or you know, Olympic medal or that's going to be happiness in itself, it isn't. right? It's what we do leading up to it. It's how we approach life. It's, you know, living the best life we can and being proud of who we are and what we do to get there. That's what leads to long-term happiness. It's not that achievement, because if we're complete pricks and we don't train hard and we don't treat other people with respect and kindness and be a good person, yeah, you might be Olympic champion, but if you're a complete shithead, if a person can say that, like, and nobody likes you and you have no family or friends because you haven't been a very good person, what does that get you in the end?
Who are you celebrating it with?
Yeah,
right. Exactly. That's part of the thing.
You got the medal on your neck. You look around and everybody else's head's down and walking away.
Right.
Like, where is that at?
Right. Yeah, and all of those achievements that you had, as much as it's you that achieved them and you put in this effort, none of that's on an island. So
exactly,
and that's part of the pride that you have too. Like, I was not a part of your Olympic success or your judo success, but I was a part of your journey in a sense. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I was there training with you. I saw that. I was bonded with you as a friend. So you appreciate that and you feel like you're part of that too, just like in a community. It's like the judo community, the National Training Center judo community is like, we feel that. I'm sure that many people that were Nicola Gill's training partners feel like they were part of that. This is one of the greatest judoka ever. He carried the flag for Canada in the opening ceremonies of the Athens Olympics. He has 2 Olympic medals. He has 3 or 4 world medals. Stud,
absolute beast.
So he did those things, but other people were part of that, whether it was Nakamura sensei or people that he trained with. They were part of that journey too, and that helps create that community. And when they have that success, part of the reason those moments are so high is because it's not you celebrating them. It's your community, your family. They're celebrating it, and they're celebrating it for themselves and for you, right? And that's what makes it so high. It's like such a joyous occasion. It's like the best New Year's Eve party ever that you can imagine, you know, because everyone's so ecstatic and excited and things like that. So I think, that's what it's just like, those are such powerful moments. And so that is what makes those moments so great. But it's not only what makes the celebration great, it's what makes you appreciate the work going in. Is like, you appreciate those bonds and those training partners more now because they're so excited for your success too, you know?
Yeah, it's that, like, nobody can achieve any of that type of success without having that community there to battle and grow with. And same like buying a house, for example. Part of the reason why it's so, whether it's a house for your family or not, is those people that are happy for you or part of that then to make it a home. Right. Just buying a house and, you know, whatever it is, you know, that's great. But at the same time, it's not going to lead to happiness. But if you can make it a home with family or friends
and bring people to your home, feed people in your home.
And that's exactly what it is, like a career.
Right.
Like, almost look at it like your home, right? And who you have to celebrate those good times with, and who you have to make it a home and make your kind of career what it is, is that's what makes it special. And that's what a person misses when it's done. And I think that's why a lot of athletes struggle after, because who do you have? A lot of people don't necessarily have that support system set up, or they don't feel like they do anymore. Like the relationship that people build, it's always going to be there, and it still needs to be, you know, worked with and cherished. But some athletes, when they retire, they feel like they don't have that community anymore, right? They pull back and they feel like, well, it's gone, and then they're left struggling on a life raft out, and it feels like a big ocean for them. Yeah. So it's something that realizing the community's there and find constructive ways to keep that bond going is pretty important.
Yeah, the two things that I take away in a sense, like for myself, is 2 of my closest friends in life are yourself and Sacha Lamontagne. So we all lived together in Montreal at the same time. I only lived there for 2 years, and then I lived in New York for a year training with Jason Morris. So my time in there was 2 years. For the time I was about 20 to 22, 21 to 23, somewhere in that range. So I'm turning 40 this year. You and I have lived in this. Yeah, you're so much younger than me. We lived in the same city for 2 years. We've been friends for 20 years, really strong friends for 20 years. So 18 years out of our friendship, we haven't lived in the same place, which speaks to the bond. And Sasha's the exact same thing. He lives in British Columbia now, and he's doing great. He also has two beautiful little boys. But the three of us lived in the same place for 2 years, and those are the two friendships that I cherish the most, that I carry. It's so important, and we're so connected, and we don't always talk or see each other as much as we like, but when we do, it's like such a strong bond that we've carried. And it's 18 years that we haven't lived in the same place, like the things we've been through in our life in that period of time, but that bond became so strong. That speaks to the power of the bonds that you create through high performance sport. And the second thing that you create in high performance sport, when you really want it and you really work for it, is there is nothing like the work ethic of people in high performance sport, because you're so passionate. And where that is another great thing is, no matter where you go in your judo career, basketball career, soccer career, whatever it is that the things that you learn is just another skill, my dad always says, like, it's just another tool in the bag to use. No matter what you do, you always have this, keep those things with you. And the work ethic that you create does amazing things when you transition into different things, or you stay in that. Maybe you become a coach, or maybe whatever, but that work ethic translates across life. That work ethic is something you carry with you in terms of like putting in the work in a relationship, or putting in the work professionally, or all of those kinds of things. You obviously went from being an Olympic athlete to throwing yourself full bore into a professional career. In a sense, that's not that rare, and it just shows how well that can. You have an incredibly successful professional career following an incredibly successful athletic career. One begets the other.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting addiction, in the sense where I think a high performance athlete, the amount of time and energy and toll it takes, you have to be addicted to the process of it, and addicted to that the grind and that life and the energy it takes. And so that addiction, when a person's done sport, if they don't have something to kind of focus on, a person feels a little bit lost. So lucky or unlucky, I guess, I had rawhides that I bought into and then joined that team. So I was just, the energy and enthusiasm and the effort I would put into my judo career, I put into the business.
Right.
And
just carried over.
Which isn't necessarily always just a healthy thing. I would say the hours and time and energy a person put in, it helped achieve some success, but at the same time, it wears a person pretty thin. So I wouldn't suggest that a person takes that same mentality into every pursuit in their life. I think it's a pretty hard road to follow forever. But right. Understanding that the effort you put into something, whether it's sport or business or family, or an
extracurricular activity, learn to play guitar,
yeah,
whatever.
Exactly. Like it having those goals are pretty important, and putting in the effort in to try to be the best you can at them is a pretty fruitful endeavor. And I think just because you're done sport doesn't mean you can't have goals anymore. It doesn't mean there's not something to drive for and pursue. Right. There's always something. So finding those things and working towards them is going to help that transition. I mean, it helped me anyhow, from that high level sport to regular life.
Right. Yeah. So I know you're super busy farming and running restaurants and meetings and all that, but it was awesome to obviously connect with you the last couple of days. On my travel, I'm driving from Yellowknife back to Southern Ontario. So stop by for a few days and get to see the restaurant and eat some beautiful food. So if people are ever in Saskatchewan, then obviously they have to come to Rawhides, number one. Right. And then the second thing is every time that someone cooks and they need canola oil, there's a good chance that at least a percentage of the oil that came from that bottle came from you. So the whole country can thank you for the food that they get to eat, right? So it's perfect.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you being you.
Perfect. Thank you.